When I was much younger, I'm always blaming myself for being an introvert. I constantly ask myself why I'm so awkward and shy with people, and sometimes even with friends that I've known for a couple of years. I remember there was this one time when I had a gathering with a big group of friends back in secondary school. We planned to meet for lunch, and I recall being late. Thus, I was the very last person that arrived. Recounting this story made me feel like punching my past self in the face. But here's the story. When I arrived, I saw one of my friends sitting at one of the tables, while the rest were ordering food at the counter. All the tables were already combined such that all 10 of us can sit together. However, as I was about to sit down on one of the chairs, my friend told me that all the seats were already taken and I'll have to ask the other tables for a chair. At that time, the thought of needing to approach a stranger's table to get a chair for myself was as good as telling me to do a public speech in front of the whole school. The only thing I could think of was to try and find a way to get out of that situation. I picked up my phone, acting as if my mom called me, and told my friend after that my mom needed me to head home for an urgent matter. In a flash, I was out of the restaurant and on my way back home. You may be laughing at me and thinking, why on earth would someone do that? I basically showed up to a gathering for barely a minute and left right after just because I had to approach another table for a chair. But here's the thing about being an introvert. When you're extremely introverted like me in the past, sometimes you just do awkward or weird things that you may or may not have the reason for. No matter how I think about it, leaving a class gathering in less than a minute simply because I was asked to try and get a chair for myself from a stranger's table was nuts. I despised myself for being so awkward back then, and whenever I looked upon that experience, it was something I wished I could have done better. That's just one of the many awkward situations that I've done, and I've missed out on so many experiences because of that. Engaging in conversations in a group setting is not difficult, as you can be a part of the conversation by simply being a listener. You can interject if you have something to say, but otherwise, you can just leave it to the others for sustaining the conversation. But in situations where you are just with one other person, it's different. You can no longer just be a listener. I remember engaging in multiple methods to get out of such social situations, even if that person is a close friend of mine. There were countless times when I'm heading home after a gathering, where I found myself taking the same train as one of my other friends. I would find myself stressing out what topics I should talk about and whether they think I'm an awkward person to be with. I know that conversations shouldn't just solely be my responsibility to sustain, and it's a two-way street, but back then, the introverted me felt like any awkward silences that occurred when I ran out of things to say was all my fault. After a while, I learned to avoid such situations such as these by lying that I'm going somewhere else to buy stuff and just disembark the train much earlier. I would wait for a couple of trains to pass before boarding the next one. You may think that maybe I'm like that because the other person is a girl, but that's the funny thing. I act the same way as I do with guys. It doesn't matter what gender they are. I'm just that awkward introvert that doesn't know how to properly handle such social situations, and I often envy my extroverted friends for having the ability to talk to anyone under the sun. As I grew up, I knew that I had to do something about it. I clearly knew that I'll be missing out a lot on life if I let the introverted me win. Letting my introverted self win means that I'll be avoiding all sorts of social gatherings and just cooping myself at home watching anime like a weep. Humans are social creatures. We have to interact with others. There are multiple studies done throughout the years that validates that fact, ranging from tackling loneliness to improving your cognitive skills. However, it's more of the fact that our most memorable and fond memories are all related to social encounters. That girl or guy that you dated, or that time that you went on an overseas internship with your classmates. All these fond memories wouldn't have existed if not for your mere existence during those times. Those fun times that you have had with your friends late at night playing video games at their house wouldn't have happened if you let your introverted thoughts take over and just stayed at home alone. Yes, it's comfortable to be alone, but you can't stay alone every single time. I've went through many things to try and fight my introvert self. It ranged from reading a bunch of books on how to talk to people, consuming a bunch of related content on YouTube, and most importantly, throwing myself out there much more often. I tried to attend most of the gatherings with my friends so that I wouldn't get too comfortable with not interacting with people. I participated in multiple co-curricular activities in my school to meet new people, and most importantly, I forced myself not to give an excuse to disembark the train earlier. You could say that I was attempting a self-destructive mindset at this point because I was getting tired of being so weak and awkward. I'm literally throwing myself at difficult situations that typical introverts would rather die than do. But as mentioned, I was really tired of missing out on the good times. The times that my friends told me how great the outing was and all made me hate myself because I decided to stay home in order to avoid potential awkward conversations. After many years of self-destructing at every social situations I can get myself into, I've learned many things the hard way and have improved much more. I experienced so many awkward encounters that I no longer feel awkward. In fact, I found out that being awkward is just a consequence of not socializing for a really long time. Just like how we feel rusty at playing a particular sport after going on a hiatus, whether it be an injury or you went on a holiday, socializing is exactly the same thing. By putting yourself out there much more, you naturally get better. You know what are the common questions that many people talk about. How's your day? How are you? These are very basic questions that many people like to ask. Some people use it as a sort of greeting, and they don't really expect much of an elaboration from you. Some have thought that it was a genius question to start a conversation with. Some just said it because they are awkward conversationalists, and that's the only thing that popped up in their head. Honestly, I don't really like such questions because it's not just way too open-ended, but it gives off a very low-effort vibe to start a conversation. Yes, starting open-ended questions are great, but when it doesn't give more context to lead the listener on how to reply, especially if the other person ain't that much of a conversationalist in the first place, you're just inviting yourself to awkward conversations. And it's not the other person's fault, it's your fault for starting it off on the wrong foot. It's much more preferable to start a conversation by asking about how's their overseas trip that they have just went, or ask them whether the restaurant that they said they'll be going last week was good. There are so many ways you can start a conversation with on the basis of either your past conversations with them, what you have seen them do on social media, or what they are wearing. But somehow, people still go with the "how are you?" and invite themselves to awkward situations. The thing is, I wouldn't have learned all these things if I didn't put myself out there. However, the drawback of being an introvert is that the moment we put our foot off the pedal for a while and stop socializing for a bit, even if we were great at talking to people before the break, we suddenly forgot how to socialize. I remember meeting up with my friends after just a week of completely not talking to anyone. It was one of the worst experiences I've had, at least that's what I thought in my head. I felt like I'd forgotten how to talk to people, stumbled on my words, ran out of topics in my head, and just felt an insane urge to go home. That's also when I came to another realization, that it all happened because of overthinking. I overthink about what the other person is thinking, what they might want to talk about. Do they think that we are boring? But it's when we overthink to this extent that we can't truly immerse ourselves in the conversation. And the key to a good conversation is actually to simply immerse yourself in it. The questions that you ask are not from a bank of questions that you have in your head that you can pull out from, but are actually the genuine questions that you really want to ask based off what they just said. As I've mentioned multiple times in my previous few videos, these are learning lessons that we may or may not already have learned. But it's only when we have truly experienced it ourselves that we can truly ingrain these learning lessons by heart and implement them. Maybe it could have taken a day of reading for someone to learn and implement them perfectly the very next day. But to some people like myself, it takes many years of self-destructing and difficult social situations that I want to run away from that allowed me to learn all these things by heart and become who I am today. What you see on this channel, me sharing about how to be more confident and talk to people, that wasn't me the moment I was born. I wasn't born confident and having the ability to enjoy public speaking like I am today. But it's because of that countless times that I've self-destructed at difficult social situations that made me who I am today. It's because of all these experiences and encounters that gave me something to share about so that others could learn from. Do I still give an excuse to my friends that I have to disembark the train at a different stop? Actually, I still do. But it's not because I feel awkward and want to avoid them. Rather, I just came to a stage that I found more peace in being alone, and I want to have that time alone to my own thoughts. I've actually reached a point that many people thought that I'm an extroverted person. Little did they know that I used to be someone that ran home because I had to ask for a chair from a stranger. I still am an introvert by heart, and I don't think an introvert ever stops being one. We just get better at hiding them.